Hi everyone! Say hi YouTube! Hello and welcome everyone to episode 1 of the KhaiCast. And this is a Halloween special. I'm very, very excited to be here. And I'm very excited to chat to you guys today about Halloween and share some stories as well. You guys know, many of you know that this is something I've wanted to do for a while now. We yap here a lot. We are fluent in Japanese, as Darius would say. And yeah, it's been requested by multiple people, so here we are. But I want to thank you guys especially. You guys are here live, which is really cool. Thank you so much for showing up to Twitch live for this first one. It might not always be live. This is just the start, but we may be doing some pre-recorded things. We'll be having guests on in the future. But for today, because it's Halloween, I want to do a special one live for Halloween. So yeah, I'm very excited to be starting this kind of new adventure, something I've been thinking about doing for a while, and I appreciate your support. So thank you guys for showing up live, but also thank you to those who might be watching this back or listening back even. I really appreciate you guys as well. You guys are all awesome. So much love. But I want to know from you guys, for chat especially, if you're celebrating Halloween. You might not be, but if you are, what are you wearing? What is your costume? What's your outfit for Halloween? Yeah, I want to see in chat. Yeah, so everyone else can see it as well. People watching back can see it. What you guys are going as, walking around as. Are you dressing up for it or not? Band t-shirt and shorts. I'm a muso. Fair. I'm wearing myself. Does that count? I mean, it could count. Technically, I've come as myself. Those in Twitch chat, you know, this is one of my emotes, the Kai Cowboy Farmer. So there you go. I'm dressed as a Stardew Valley inspired farmer. Croissant PJs, love that. Blueberry muffin from Strawberry Shortcake, love that. Early 2000s version, we love that. Don't know yet, still have to go shopping. Fair. I am the GOAT, Michael Jackson. Yes, W, Michael Jackson. Valak from The Conjuring, and another look I can't disclose at the moment. Ooh, multiple outfits is very exciting. Very exciting. That's so cool. You feel free to keep putting it in the chat, guys, if you haven't already, or if, yeah. And then you can, share with each other what you're going as this year for Halloween, or what you're dressing up as. If you're doing something fun, if you're going trick-or-treating, or if you're just going to a party, or you're hanging out with friends, whatever it may be, I hope you're safe and have a fun time. And same to you guys watching or listening to this back. Feel free to put in comments of YouTube maybe what your outfit is for this year for Halloween as well. But I should get into what we're doing for this podcast. So we'll be looking at some of the internet's scariest stories, but we'll be also hearing from chat and some of their creepy and scary stories. So first we'll look at the internet's scariest stories, but before I get to that, I wanted to talk about what Halloween is like in Australia. For those that are Aussies, obviously, you have some experience with that. You sort of know what's around you. For those that aren't from Australia, you probably have no idea what it's like. And it might be a very different experience for you. You might not celebrate it all, or you might celebrate it all the time. But Halloween has not been a part of Aussie culture. It's only in recent years that people have started to see it and sort of engage with it and the festivities, that it's become more popular. Especially from a consumerist perspective, it seems to be growing. It's not historically been a major part of our culture, but many Aussies are starting to see that differently, I think. You know, the tradition of children going door to door trick-or-treating, or homes being decorated, you know, you barely see that here. Many Aussies, I think, look at Halloween as something that is imported or even borrowed. I think a lot of the time Aussies would look at it as something taken from the US. Many of you from the US, you know that you know, it's a big deal there. It's what you guys celebrate, and everyone's out and about in the streets, dressed up, but it's not quite the same here. And I think a lot of Aussies also debate over whether the celebrations are just overly American or even acceptable at all for Aussies. Some are definitely skeptical of it, saying it's definitely driven more by retailers and consumerism, by just all the stuff that's put and stocked on the shelves, and that maybe it doesn't have that genuine cultural meaning that it could have or should have, perhaps. Even for me, I'll tell you about my experience. I did not grow up celebrating Halloween, and it's the same with my family today. We don't celebrate it really. This is as much as the celebration has ever been for me for Halloween, and that's really down to you guys and this whole community that we've built here on Twitch mainly. Most Aussies are pretty easygoing. We don't typically believe in, sort of crazy stories and conspiracies and paranormal activity and things like that. I mean, many would, but a lot don't. And there's also an argument that because Halloween falls in spring in Australia, and it's really hot at the moment, even tonight, it's quite a warm night, and actually we had some rain before, so that would have stopped people going out. But typically it's like much warmer and it's getting towards summer, that it's very different to the northern hemisphere, where of course it is fall and sort of getting towards winter. It's cooler kind of vibe. I wonder if that sort of changes it a little bit as well. I'm not sure, but it's never been the norm. It's never been the norm, Halloween here in Australia, whether that's due to tradition, culture, religion even plays a factor into that. But one could observe that it's changing in Australia, and definitely when you look at statistics and research, it is changing, especially, of course, in younger age groups, I think, but surprisingly in the older ones too, and especially in retail behaviour. So, yes. But I did do a little bit of research in 2023 from the Australian Retailers Association. They found that more than 5.3 million Australians plan to celebrate Halloween. Now, that doesn't probably sound like much if you live in a country like, let's say, China or India, with over 1 billion people. But Australia only has a population of 27 million. So, over 5 million out of 27 million. It's a big portion of Aussies that are celebrating a holiday or a tradition that they don't really even believe in or care about to start with. That's a lot of people that have no interest in Halloween suddenly now have a bit more of an interest. And from that research, the spending that was forecast was to reach approximately 490 million, which was up 14% from the previous year. So, Aussies that don't have any cultural or traditional ties to Halloween suddenly interested in it. The stuff's getting put on the shelves at the shops. Retailers are, booming with it. And so what are we doing? We're just buying it and we're joining in the festivities. 5.3 million Australians planning to celebrate it. That was 2 years ago. And the research forecast for this year, for today, where we're celebrating Halloween here in Australia, says that this would climb to over 500 million, with the average person spending over $100, which, to be fair, doesn't seem like much, but the average person spending that, it's not like, some people were probably spending thousands while others spend zero. And let's say maybe 20 plus million people are not spending a cent because they're the ones not celebrating it. That means that potentially 5 million people are spending all of that. So it's a lot. Like it is a lot. There's some people that'd be there'd be people that are spending a lot on Halloween. Like $100, you could probably go on Amazon and get like a costume for that, right? Like, I don't know, or decorations, things like that. I mean, stuff's pretty cheap, but if the average person is spending that much on Halloween, it's interesting because we don't celebrate it. I can even tell you guys. I'll tell you guys my story from today. I'm glad that this happened today, so I actually have proof for this podcast. I went out to the shops after I finished work today. I was just getting some groceries, right? And I tell you what, I drove around for up to half an hour in total. I had to go to multiple different places as well. I had to get petrol. I had to get groceries, as I said. I sort of went everywhere. I went to like 3 different sort of spots or hubs for shops at the time. And not that far from home, but so many suburban areas like in and around Sydney where I'm part of. I'm not going to say where, but where I live, and so many streets filled with what I know are kids, families. There's schools around. There's childcare centers. Blah blah blah. So there's a lot of kids around. There's a lot of teenagers around. There's a lot of families around in the area. It's not like an old person area, and yet there was like the first part of my drive, I saw one person celebrating Halloween, and this was a Friday. This is a Friday afternoon in Sydney. This is a Friday afternoon at like 5 o'clock p.m. The kids have finished school. Like everyone else is finished work more or less. Why there was one person walking, like one person walking, which, yeah, I think that's insane. There was one person dressed up. I saw like another group of 3 girls that were like walking around, but they weren't even dressed up, and I was like, that could literally be them just going for a walk or going to the shops. Like, there's yeah, I don't even know if they were celebrating Halloween. It's very likely that they weren't. There were people walking their dogs, like, but there was only one person I saw with an actual bucket doing trick-or-treating at the time. I think when I went to the shops at another place, I did see a few more people, and there were a few kids lining up with their parents for something, but it was really interesting just to watch. Like, there was just nothing on the streets at all, like, and that was before it was raining. The weather was perfect. Yeah, so that to me was surprising. Anyway, back to the stats. It is changing though, I think, and the stats are showing that in the 2025 data, participation among 50 to 64 year olds was projected for today, I suppose, and this sort of season of it in the week leading up, was projected to be 21%, and the same with over 65s, like 21% of 50 to 64 year olds and 65 plus, so old people. The projection was 21% of those people were participating. So like, I thought that was crazy, because I've just told you guys how little Australians celebrate it, and you'd think, okay, well, that's going to be all the kids, young adults, perhaps people my age with young families, that sort of thing. Maybe parents in their 40s, 50s taking their kids, whatever. But even with that, there's 21% of 50 to 64 and then 65 plus age groups who are also participating in Halloween, which is crazy. Whether that is with their kids who are a little bit older or even grandkids then, whatever the case may be, they're obviously getting involved more, like way, way more. 1 in 5 of them are taking part in Halloween, which, to an American perhaps, it's like, whoa. Like, everyone does that here. Not here. It's literally 0 most of the time. So it's kind of crazy that it's changed that much. And the question I want to ask chat, and I want to ask YouTube and whoever's listening or watching is, so what? So what? I think for those that aren't Aussie, there's different responses to this. There's, okay, we celebrate it all the time. It's crazy that people don't celebrate it. Like, it's the norm. Sure. For those that are Aussie though, if you're watching or you're listening, think for yourself. If you decide to celebrate, consider why. And if you do, how can you make it meaningful in a local Australian way? Like, is there a way that Halloween can be meaningful to you locally here in Australia when, with everything I've just said, it's not popular, it's changing a little bit, but I went out in the streets, there's not really anyone around, there's not really much happening, it's a Friday night, and there's still not really parties happening. There's a few houses that are decorated perhaps. So yeah, if you're an Aussie, maybe it's something to think about today. Like, why is it celebrated? Is it just an excuse to have a party, to have some food? Is it for kids just to dress up as a princess or like a superhero or something? I don't think it's as much like, Halloween in the sense of really dark undertones, scary stuff, dressing up as a ghost and like actually scaring people so they have heart attacks. Like, that doesn't seem to be the vibe, even if it's partly that historically, or it comes from a place of that. Yeah, so there you go. I'll leave you with that. I'd be happy to hear your thoughts in chat, of course. You guys can chat about it with each other. And please do leave a comment on YouTube if you're watching from there. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But now, chat, I've done a lot of talking about Australia and Halloween, I would love to read some scary stories now from the internet. So, read 2 stories from the internet that I saw were reviewed quite highly, but I haven't read them through myself, so I'm going to be able to react to them properly with you guys. So I'll read the first story, and then I'm going to ask you guys some questions in chat, and I'll respond to you guys, and we'll discuss it briefly, and then I'll read the second story, and we'll repeat. All right. So let's go through the stories. I'm going to read story 1. This is from Creepypasta. This story, and you may have heard it before, but hopefully you guys have not heard the story and you can enjoy the story with me. This, I don't know how scary or creepy it is or how mental it's going to get, but I am very much looking forward to it. These are going to be kind of long ones, like 10 to 15 minutes, so just settle in. Make sure you grab a snack, grab a drink, get cozy under a blanket if you need to, and just enjoy the story. This one's called I Found a Letter from My Stalker, written by Minister of Owls. Alright, here we go. Enjoy, chat. I found this note nailed onto a tree on my front lawn. I really don't know how to describe it. I'll just let you read it yourself. I saw you today. It was your birthday. You didn't see me. You hardly ever do these days. Your skin looked so nice and healthy, and your eyes, they were the most beautiful I'd ever seen them. You've grown so much. I remember how different you used to look when you were younger. I remember the day I first met you. It was 4 years ago. I was sitting at my desk, head down, listening to the teacher rattling off names for attendance. The teacher called out a name I didn't recognize, and a stranger's voice answered behind me. Was there a new student? The teacher didn't pause for a second, just continued calling out name after name. I turned my head to where the voice had come from. I saw you, a pale thing, so thin, your eyes red, at a seat that should have been empty. I saw the fireflies flying around you, flickering. Dozens of them never straying far from you. I saw them going through you and coming out through your skin like you were a mist to them. Can you believe I thought you were a ghost? No one else seemed to acknowledge the new stranger sitting at the back of the class. Class after class, hour after hour, passed as I waited for something to happen. For someone to notice you, for you to leave, for you to let out a ghoulish scream and claw at me like in this horror story I was certain I was in. But nothing happened. Teachers came and went, my classmates laughed and slept, and you just sat there. The bell rang for recess. The other kids ran to their mundanities for the day, leaving me and you together in the empty classroom. You stood up and pulled a chair from the desk next to you, making it face your desk. You turned your head to me and spoke. Well, you're slow today. Come on, ask me your questions. I don't know why I didn't run away screaming at that moment. Probably would have turned out better for me in the long run, but let's not speculate. I guess at that point in my life, I was pretty bloody lonely. I figured there was only a 50-50 chance you'd eat me, and the other 50 was that someone wanted to talk with me. Kid priorities don't make sense to me either these days. So I went along with the flow. I walked over to your desk, sat down on the chair you pulled for me and asked my question. What were you? You told me you didn't know. You said that once you were a child like me, with parents and friends, you used to go to the same schools as me. Then one day, one ordinary day, when you were 10, you just woke up and you were like this. Covered in fireflies, and no one could remember you the moment they concentrated on anything else. No one, not even your parents. You told me of how I'd noticed you every day, how I'd think of you until recess every day, how I'd come to you every day, how we would talk every day, how we would meet for the first time every day, for the last 3 years. About how I'd forget the instant I walked out of the room, how everyone would forget you, how the fireflies would make them, how for the last 3 years you'd been alone. Your story was very hard to believe, so I didn't. I asked what reality prank show I was on. You looked, well, unimpressed, and asked me to continue telling my story. I was caught off guard by the non sequitur. You said last time I was here, I was telling you a horror story about a haunted house. As you detailed the story, goosebumps prickled my skin. It was a story I'd been making up in my head, a story I hadn't told anyone yet. At that moment, a million reactions were open to me, all simultaneously adequate and inadequate, but the only thing that seemed proper was to finish the story for you. So I did. Halfway through, you interrupted me to ask if my mother had recovered from her sickness yet. I had to shake my head, a bit ashamed at the fact that I shared this private matter to a stranger. The story ended a few minutes before recess. My next class was in another room. You told me to go. Your steadiness took me back. You seemed so accepting of your fate, like you'd already gotten used to the idea of being forgotten forever. I was a kid back then. I wasn't a particularly smart kid, and I was probably on the onset of a crush. So you can excuse what I did next as an example of my childhood stupidity. I grabbed my scissors, pressed it against my arm's skin, and dug in. As it drew blood, I pushed it forwards till the cut formed the shape I wanted. Letter by letter, I carved your name onto my arm. Just so you know, I don't regret that. Don't get me wrong, kid power might have made me do it, but it was sure as hell didn't make the pain go away. It was one of the most painful experiences of my life. But even then, as a kid, I thought what was happening to you was unfair. I remember how your eyes looked when you saw that, the confusion, how strange it was for you that anyone would want to remember. I remember that look so clearly. When I woke up the next day and saw your name on my arm, I remembered you. I didn't forget. That day, for the first time, we had a conversation that wasn't so one-sided. You said no one had ever done anything like that before, and I suggested I might have a mental illness. I won't deny it, that drew a little blood. As we talked, a creeping thought came into my head. Did you prefer it when I didn't remember? That night, I was sitting up on my bed, staring at your name on my arm, wondering if I should cover it up so I couldn't see it, and give you back your privacy when I heard a crash. I looked up to see my bedroom window shattered and a dirty rock on my floor. I looked out of the cracked window to see a dark figure on my lawn. You were outside yelling about how we should hang out. It took me a while to get used to how bad you were at talking to people. Years without practice made you quite a bit rusty. That was alright. We had a lot of time. For the next 2 years, we spent most of our free time together. Most of the time we talked, you'd tell me an aspect of your life and how you lived. You still stayed in your old house. Your parents never noticed the food that had gone missing, never noticed the extra room or that you'd stolen the extra keys. One night, I confided in you that I was beginning to think you were a part of my imagination, Fight Club style. After all, what could you do to me that I couldn't do to myself? You spent the next month or so trying to leave bite marks on my ear or neck to prove a point. I still have a few scars on my ear, so I guess you did. Looking back, I could see the warning signs even then. Your skin seemed to get worse and worse, paler and paler, and you'd rubbed your eyes raw. It was in winter we had our wake-up call. The morning began like any other. I woke up, brushed my teeth, and started searching for clothes to wear. It was a winter morning and my room was dark, so I didn't see your name on my arm. The cold sent shivers through my body and pulled out a long-sleeve jacket. A small bell rang in my head. Don't you usually roll your sleeves up? Yeah, and why did I? That was annoying. I finished tidying up and headed to school. On the school bus, I felt oddly content, like something I'd been worrying about had just disappeared. I walked up the school stairs, down the hall, through my classroom door, and sat down at my desk. The same feeling of a burden forgotten hounded my mind. What was I forgetting? When recess came, I just sat at my desk while my classmates ran out. It felt like a ritual, but I didn't know what for. I was contemplating just walking out to join them when I heard it. It was something small in the wind, like a whisper, but it came over and over, incessant. It sounded like my name. I knew this was strange, that this was worth my attention, but I felt oddly calm. Everything would be alright. Everything would be fine. Just ignore it. I sat there at my desk, my mind a war zone between two conflicting, contradictory voices, when I felt a force tugging on my sleeve. The moment I noticed this, my jacket sleeve tore open. I saw your name on my arm, and then your hand that had ripped my jacket open. You'd been yelling at me for over 20 minutes. I think that was the moment we realized how on edge our friendship really was, one accident away from complete erasure. We spent most of the next year in the town library together trying to find out what the fireflies were. It wasn't really a problem for me. Because of my mother's treatment, my family couldn't afford to go on any trips, and our house didn't have heating anymore, so I was happy to spend my time with you. Trying to find information was a puzzle in and of itself. After all, how would I read about people I couldn't remember, and how would you find out who was special when no one could even remember enough about them to record them? We found our old family trees and records. Individually, we'd write down the name of everyone in the book on 2 lists, and then we would compare. The names I hadn't remembered to write down, but you had, would become the focus. They were the names who were under the curse of the fireflies. We compiled a list of suspicious books we thought could help us, because they were written by or were about the people we were searching for. I read the books with the list of names side by side, reading it again for every page of the book. You scoured the internet on the library computers, on the lookout for articles about the people. Our search would lead us to the first glimpse we got of what was really happening to you. It was late at night when you found the picture. I was a bit drowsy at that time, and almost about to nod off, when I heard a sharp intake of breath. I turned to see you standing up, pointing at the screen. I didn't see anything. Well, anything noteworthy. On the screen was a picture of a clearing somewhere in the woods. You held up your piece of paper where you'd marked out 2 names. Susie Appleby Regan, 13, Terry Appleby Regan, 12. Siblings. For a moment I saw the paper and the screen side by side. Side by side. And then I saw them. 2 figures emerging from the woods towards the camera. They were almost humanoid, with the exception of their limbs, which stretched to nightmarish proportions. Their blank, white skin was that of a pure albino, and looked more like tree bark than anything you expected to find on a mammal. A cloud of fireflies surrounded the duo. The shorter one looked emaciated. I could see their rib cages around which their eyes! God, their eyes, so small, so red. The taller one, with its white hair, didn't look alive anymore. They were little more than skin wrapped around a skeleton. Fireflies swarmed out of the pair's empty eye sockets. Both reached for the cameraman. I looked at the article surrounding the picture. It was a blog posted by a hiker, 20 years after the last mention of the 2 kids. The picture was a mystery to the cameraman as well. He'd been wanting to go to the woods pictured for a while now, but he never actually remembered going there. The picture had just appeared on his camera one day, out of the blue. For a moment I looked at your face, your thin, pale face with those red-veined eyes. Would that be you when my scar faded? Just a walking horror I'd glimpse and then forget? We worked through our reading list at a much faster pace starting from that moment. Maybe we should have gone slower. At least every book, every website we'd left untouched promised hope. The books that we finished and tossed aside promised nothing but the clearing in the woods as one's future. And we tossed aside a lot of books. I believe I tore through 3/4 of my reading list before I stumbled across the journal. Oh God, that horrible, horrible journal. The journal used to belong to a mental patient named Joey, who claimed to be a serial killer. He was locked up in an asylum when the police discovered his supposed victims never existed. He was diagnosed with a need for attention and shoved away. They should have electrocuted him. They should have fried him until his flesh melted and his hair burned. In the journal he talked about how he carried out his killings. He knew things, bizarre and disturbing things no one else knew. He knew of strange creatures that lived in the woods. Of them, his favorites were the fireflies. I'm not going to tell you how he summoned these things. I trust you. I trust you more than anyone, but a thing like this belongs to the ground more than it ever will to the human mind. In the end, It's sufficient to know that these things were not fireflies. Joey would start his ritual by taking a kid, anyone he pleased. He could take them at any time, in the dead of night from their own homes, or in broad daylight from their front yards. It didn't matter if he was seen. He'd take them to his house and drag them inside. Usually, an Amber Alert came up at that point. He didn't care. Like I said, it wouldn't matter soon. He'd drag them to a special room in his house. Here the fireflies would come and latch onto them. Now, nobody was searching for the kids. Not the police, not the parents, nobody. From then on, he could do whatever he wanted to the kid. He'd get bored of them after a day or two, after the child had broken. At that point, he disposed of them. Hacksaw, kitchen knife, anything would work. He detailed a large pit of bodies he kept in the woods, swarming with bugs. One day, I guess he got bored of that too, so he went right to the police station and turned himself in. Not on account of guilt, no. He just wanted someone to know about the stuff he was doing. Sick bastard. And don't get the wrong idea, he never stopped killing kids. The asylum doors didn't stop him from doing what he liked. It just made him improvise. He made a new way. He modified the flies, so they could survive without a host, just in a dormant state. When a child, he specified the age, would approach the swarm, it would latch on and begin its effect. Over the years, the child would warp horribly into the things we saw in the woods. I wish I could hate him in peace. I wish I could say the world owed him nothing, but that wouldn't be true. He detailed a way out. On the final page, there was an exact explanation on how to get rid of the fireflies. You must have seen something in my face because at that moment, you asked if I had found anything. I said no and closed the book. A few minutes later, you shut down the computer. You picked up the last book and went through it yourself. When you reached the end cover, you tossed it aside. I asked what we should do now. You said it was all right. I could go home. We'd talk about it in the morning. I stood up and walked past the shelves of books. I headed for the library entrance but stopped right outside the door and waited. I waited until I heard the sniffling sounds. I sneaked back to our table where you were quietly sobbing. You had your head in your hands. I sat back down as you raised your eyes to me. You said you wished you'd never met me. How happy you were when you had nothing to lose. How I ruined your life. You'd never really gotten better at talking to people. That was the worst love confession I'd ever heard. I remember how we kissed that night. I remember your hands gripping my hair. I remember that kiss. I wish it could have been just a kiss. I'm sorry I ruined that moment. When my arms were around you, I was close enough to steal a firefly without you noticing. I remember holding the firefly in my hand. I remember how it struggled until it didn't, until it was a part of me. The fireflies shifted. They came over to me and left you. I remember the familiar look in your eyes, the confusion. I never wanted to see that confusion in your eyes again. You deserved to be loved, and you deserved to know that. I wasn't really living anyway. You reached for me. I pulled away as the last lights of recognition faded from your eyes, and then you were just staring at a stranger, walking away into a crowd of strangers. That was a year ago. You've gotten so much better since then. You have so many friends now, so many people at your birthday party. You also look so much healthier. I haven't been as fortunate. My skin's gotten a lot paler, and my eyes hurt all the time now. I couldn't go to school like you did all those years. I haven't wasted my time though. I found Joey's pit. The bodies, there were so many bodies. There's a grave for those children now. Without me, my mum could afford her surgery. She looked so happy. Just yesterday I saw her playing with my baby brother. I saw you crying yesterday. You were with your friends laughing. For a brief moment your eyes met mine, and then they were so wet. I think I'm going away. For good, I think. You're not going to be happy if I stick around. I'm so happy I met you, even if you don't remember me. Note end. Sometimes I go through depressive episodes. I feel so lonely, even with my friends. I don't know what's going through my head during these times, and sometimes I'd end up in a bathtub, a knife in my hands and my wrists bleeding. Until now, I thought I was cutting my wrists. I wasn't. The cuts, they're letters. I'd been carving a name onto my arm. Well, chat, there we have it. That is story number 1. That is, I found a letter from my stalker. Wow. Chat, what do we make of that? For those listening after the live stream, for those watching along after, what did we think of that? If anyone was here for the whole thing, heard the whole story. It's actually really good. I like it very much. Spooky. No idea what that story is about, but sounds ominous. Yes, it was. That was kind of crazy. That was low-key kind of insane. I feel like I would have to just process that. Wow. That was very heavy. Yeah, that was really, really heavy. I guess I should have put a disclaimer, but yeah, I should have put a disclaimer perhaps that these are kind of scary, spooky stories, but you know, you guys know that with horror stories on Halloween. Consider me spooked. Yes, fair. Missed the last minute purposefully. I totally get that. There were a lot of twists and turns. Yeah, that was interesting. So let's say on a spooky scale of 1 to 10, what would you score that? I want to hear what you guys think. On like on like an actual scary level, how high up was that? Because that wasn't light-hearted like it potentially could have been. 8 out of 10, 8, 2 8s so far. Yeah, I would have put it up there too. That was kind of insane. I don't know if the others are going to be that crazy, but I'm only going to read one more as well because they're quite long. But that was insane. Somewhat a love story mixed with horror. Yeah, it was sort of tagged like that. I just didn't know what that was actually going to look like. But I hadn't really even scanned the story, so I didn't really know anything it was about. But I had checked reviews first just to make sure, like, you know, people liked it and it was a good story to be able to read out. And someone commented saying, "This is the most beautiful, dark, tragic love story I've ever read. This touched me deeply. Sometimes I feel like I've been so desensitized by my life that I don't feel things anymore. Nothing gives me extreme reactions these days. No deep sadness, fear, no strong happiness. I'm always just normal. This pierced the veil. I felt this." I don't know if maybe you would agree with that person's sentiment. It just really pierces through. I felt that. That felt heavy to even read as I was trying to process the story. I'd say like 6, 8. Yeah, I would definitely put it up there. Probably like a 7 or 8. It was insane. It was very well written though. Yeah, as someone who writes, I thought that was really well written. It made sense. I think it flowed pretty well. That's probably one of the better stories I'm gonna see online, I'd say. But let's get straight onto the next one. So the first story was I Found a Letter from My Stalker. That was written 6 years ago now. That was by Minister of Owls. If you guys would like, I'm more than happy to share these links later. I can put them on Discord. I can put them in the YouTube description as well, so that you guys can check them out for yourselves and other ones like it. This one's rated quite highly, and I guess you guys can see why now. That was really well written and yeah, quite scary, and just really, really heavy. Like talking about some heavy topics. So I guess full warning that could very well be the same again. This one sounds a little bit different though. This one is called One Last Trick or Treat. And this one is written by L. Chan. So there you go. Alright. This one apparently is a little bit shorter. So let's get straight into it though. Strap in. It's that time of the year again. I know how I'm going to be spending Halloween. Same way I have for the past 2 years, slowly nursing a beer in the bar. Watching the glass sweat on that smooth wooden counter, staring at it till it goes warm in my hand. I'm not there to get drunk. I'm there to escape. I never want to be alone at home over Halloween night again. I promised the deputy that I wouldn't talk about that night. The town didn't need it. Hell, I even deleted the video. But now, with Halloween around the corner, it all comes back. Well, small town law enforcement doesn't care too much about the internet. I live in a small house at the end of the lane, another nondescript house down a row of its sisters, prefabricated mostly, far enough off the beaten path to be cheap, not so far as to be rural. But close, pretty damn close. I didn't expect many kids to call around trick-or-treating come Halloween. It's a long road, and most children manage to fill their baskets long before they get to my place. Besides, I quite like the peace and quiet. Halloween used to be a good night to settle down and catch some of the classic horror movies on TV. I kept a couple of bags of candy around just in case some kids actually made it all the way down the lane, but mostly it would be an evening all to myself. I can't quite remember what I was watching that night. Probably because I'd been enjoying an after-dinner beer and I may have gotten carried away, dozing off after one too many. But I woke with a start. My beer had gone warm on the side table, my hand still curled around the can. I winced as I unwrapped my fingers. Something had woken me up. The TV droned on in the background, the senseless drivel of late-night programming flickering across the room. Maybe it was just some high school kids out after some Halloween party, out on the streets, making some noise that woke me up. I checked the time. Past midnight. I was glad that I invested in a little security for my house, just the basics really. A good camera to cover my front lawn, motion-activated lights around the front and back. I was just trying to make the tough decision of whether to clear up the mess right there and then, or to kick the can down the road till the next morning, when a loud rapping at the door shattered the silence. The can bounced off the floor, warm beer spraying across the bottom of my track pants. The shock left me too numb even to swear. I had just set the can back upright when the knocking sounded again. That arrhythmic rap increasingly impatient, the tempo building up as I stepped towards the door. I peered around the edge of the window. I saw nothing but my pale face in the glass. It was pitch dark outside. Why wasn't the light working? The knocking stopped. A tree branch perhaps, or perhaps something else tapping on the porch. The peephole glared at me, that little glass orb suddenly bulging with some half-promised horror. I swallowed. Or I tried. My throat was dry, the warm beer on the floor suddenly inviting. "It's nothing," I said out loud, hoping that the familiar echo of my voice off the walls would ground me somehow. I walked up to the door and peered out, only seeing the orange cones cast by the halogen streetlights a distance away. Nothing. I thought to myself, feeling childishly stupid. I sucked in a deep breath, feeling my lungs strained, and let the air stream out slowly. Then, another knock. I turned back around to face the door. My heart punched at the inside of my chest, its crazed dance playing counterpoint to the knocking. I wasn't surprised to see my hand shake as I reached for the doorknob. Our town was a safe one, far from the troubles of the big cities, or so we'd read in the papers. We had little more to fear in the night than seeing our trash strewn across the yard by the nimble fingers of raccoons. I threw the door open. The porch lights winked on, suddenly blinding me. I blinked away the white spots from my vision. A pair of children stood on my porch. They must have been 9 or 10. I couldn't see much more of them because they were in classic Halloween get-up. A simple sheet draped over each of them, a pair of holes cut out for them to see. A pair of small baskets for candy broke the smooth lines of the sheets. The toes of brand new dress shoes peeked out from under the sheets. A boy and a girl, I thought. Trick or treat. Such a common refrain. I'd expected the words but not the delivery. There were but 2 figures in front of me, yet their voices seemed to come from a great distance away. Trick or treat. The pair spoke again. I felt a little discomforted at the distortion in their voices. More than the weird volume, their voices seemed to blend into each other's, with some strange harmonics at play at the edges. It seemed almost as though there was a choir of 2 just there speaking to me. "Treat, I guess," I said. More than anything, I wanted those 2 away from the house. The whole situation felt wrong, the familiar veneer of the season concealing something deeper, something rotten, like that small panic when biting into a fruit and feeling that lack of resistance, your teeth sinking into soft mush instead of sweet flesh. For a moment I blamed the haze of alcohol, the dregs of sleep clouding my judgment, but adrenaline had swept those far away. My fear was true. I turned to the counter where I kept my keys and grabbed for the bag of candy I had prepared for the occasion. I was half hoping that the two figures would be gone when I returned to the door, that they'd been a figment of my imagination, perhaps a shadow of some dream brought on by cheap horror movies and cold pizza. I had no such luck. The pair hadn't moved an inch. They each raised their baskets. There were already an assortment of candy there. They'd had a good day. "A bit late for you guys to be out, isn't it? Where are your parents?" The only answer I got was an impatient shaking of the baskets, the rasp of candy wrappers rustling. I held out a handful of candy, ready to drop it and call it a night. I expected to see a small pale hand clutching at the handle of the basket. Instead, I saw the anemic matte sheen of plastic. The basket was draped off the plastic hand of some kind of store mannequin. I was more than thoroughly creeped out by this effective little trick. I shrugged. Maybe the voices were recorded, a little technology to bolster an otherwise traditional costume. I felt the fear melting away as I explained it to myself in my head. Just some clever little children, probably with the help of an adult. Smart, I thought. It had certainly got me going for a while. "Stay safe," I told them, dropping the last of the candy into the baskets. They didn't acknowledge me. They just stood still on the worn wooden boards of my porch. I shut the door on them. The window darkened as the light on the porch shut off. Odd. Maybe the motion detection stopped working. Some unbidden instinct told me to stay there and wait. I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the porch as the two walked off. Still, the light stayed dark. My relief grew as the odd strangers left my property. Still, something didn't sit right. Something wasn't right. The light was working. It turned on when it detected me. It saw me. It didn't see the kids. The sensor was working. It was state-of-the-art, passive infrared. Detected motion by detected changes in temperature, like a human body. Like mine, but not the kids. Whatever was under those pristine white sheets wasn't warm at all. The realization washed over me, like an ice cube running down my spine. My breath came in short rasps. I had to see. I had to know. I could barely bring my hand to the curtains, they were shaking so bad. When I pinched the edge of the curtain between my thumb and my finger, the curtain began to undulate wildly. I filled my lungs and peered out through the glass. They were still there, barely 20 yards away. Doing nothing, just standing there, motionless, facing the street. As I watched, they both swiveled their heads in perfect tandem to affix 2 pairs of fathomless eye holes on the window. There was no way they could have seen me come to the window. I had to put the back of my hand in my mouth and bite down hard to keep from calling out. They knew. They knew I was there. I backed away from the window, dragging my leaden feet over the carpeted floor. I barely noticed when my heel knocked the can back. The beer leaked out onto the carpet, leaving a widening patch in front of me. I couldn't believe the raw animal fear those two had summoned up in me. Every instinct I had told me to run. Run! Get help! Anything but stay and be trapped in my own house. What could I do? Call the police and tell them that I was scared of 2 little children trick-or-treating? Call one of my friends past midnight and ask them to come over like a little boy crawling to his parents' room after a nightmare? The situation was ridiculous. My mind told me so. That there had to be a rational explanation for everything. But I could not explain away the light, fluttery feeling in my stomach. I could not rationalize the prickly lump at the back of my throat. They'd only said 3 words to me in those unearthly tones. Who knew how cold those lips were? I shut the door to the kitchen, the sound echoing through the empty house. I turned my chair to face the front door, and then I waited, white-knuckled, for the dawn to come. I must have fallen asleep sometime during that cold, long wait, not daring to move from my chair, paralyzed with fear that one of those shrouded children would appear at my window, or worse yet, behind me. But even that manic store of energy wore out as the night wound to a close. I was woken up by a polite knock on the front door. I sat bolt upright, nearly falling off my chair. I stumbled to the door, a hint of the dread from a few hours ago still lingering like a stale funk in the air. I checked the peephole again. This time I was confronted with the well-scrubbed face of one of our town deputies. We'd been to school together. It was that kind of smallish town where you'd know almost everybody your age if they had history there. He was an earnest man, tough but fair. "Good morning, officer." "Good morning," he replied. The sour look on his face told me that it was anything but that. His nose twitched as he took in the stale, sour smell of beer steaming off the floor in the morning sun. "Had a good night last night?" I thought back to the night before. No, I didn't. The lawman was quick to see the fleeting shadow of doubt wash across my face. He pressed home his advantage. "You care to explain why you stole the 2 mannequins from the store, dressed them up and put them on your lawn?" He shifted to the side, and past his door-filling bulk, I saw 2 familiar shapes on my lawn. My lungs wouldn't fill with air. They were still there. They'd been there the whole time. "You okay, buddy?" The big man leaned in, blocking my view, and steadied my shoulder with one of his strong hands. I brushed his hand off and lurched out into the yard, mindless of the freezing dew on my bare feet. The pair stood there, the draped sheets joined in between them. They were holding hands. The 2 of them were holding hands. I brought my palm down gingerly on the head of the one nearer to me, hard. I felt hard plastic. I whipped the sheet off with one smooth motion. I gave a strangled cry as I stared into the empty green eyes of a child mannequin. I backed away, too quick. I ended up on my ass on the cold grass, clawing and scrambling backwards until I bumped into the solid legs of the deputy behind me. He'd been quick to recognize my unease earlier. He was just as quick to realize genuine fear. He hoisted me back to my feet and helped me back inside. "Mind telling me what that was all about?" He dumped me on the office chair in front of my computer. I tried, but I couldn't force the words out. The deputy sighed and settled onto my couch, wrinkling his nose at the empty beer cans on the side table. He leaned forward. "First call of the morning after Halloween, and I'm chasing down this break into a store in the middle of town. Now I've got you hung over and scared from a damned pair of dolls on your front yard. What I know is someone got into a store, smashed up the glass, stole sheets and a couple of mannequins. Bloody kids again. Except the glass." The lines on his brow deepened. I watched his Adam's apple bob up and down. "The glass was on the outside of the shop only. Damnedest thing. You've got a camera on your yard, don't you?" I nodded, numbly. "What say you give me another 10 minutes of your time, tops? We go through that footage. I see who put those things on your lawn, and then I'll be out of your life, hopefully for good." I turned to face my computer and called up the stored videos on my hard drive. They were all transferred by Wi-Fi. Convenient for the time that I had bought the cameras. Just put on double speed backwards. We'll see who set them there soon enough. I hit the reverse play key and upped the speed. I saw the 2 of us scuttle down from the house to the lawn and back again. Then the first rays of the sun retreating from the grass, pulling back over the pair of figures until they were back in darkness. The 2 of them stood there, motionless, for the longest time. When the 2 figures moved all by themselves, in a jerky, swaying motion, back from my lawn to my front door, the cursor danced a little jig in the corner of the screen as the shakes returned, stronger than before. The sharp hiss behind me told me I wasn't alone in my discomfort. I shuddered as I watched myself on screen, so close to the 2 abominations, giving them a handful of candy each. I slowed the recording back to normal speed. On screen, I saw myself turn back into the house to retrieve the candy. The 2 figures stood there impassive. As one, they both fixed those dark eye holes on the sheets on the camera. There was something else unmistakable. There was a slight pulse in the sheets, a small undulation. The mannequins were breathing. I've seen enough. I turned to look at the deputy, his face as white as the sheets on the shrouded figures on the screen, his hand tight around the grip of his sidearm. That of all the things scared me most of all. A symbol of law and order who had seen the worst of what our little community had to offer, just as scared as I was and ready to pull a gun in my house. I clicked the window shut and got up. I wandered over to my cabinet. I pulled out a pair of tumblers and a bottle of the good stuff. The bottle gave a couple of contented glugs as I sloshed the rich golden whiskey into the glasses. I set one down in front of the other man and took a sip from my glass. A lawman could lose his job drinking on duty. The deputy didn't hesitate when he emptied half his glass. He didn't look at me when he spoke. My old Nan wasn't from around here. She was back from the old country, across the sea. She hated Halloween. Said there were things out that night that weren't meant to see the light of day. One night a year, she told me, for one single night, some things were set loose. The candy and costumes were a new thing. Back in the past, on All Hallows Eve, good folk crossed themselves and prayed and stayed in. Whatever's on that recording, it's not what our town needs, you understand? Dumb high school kids, I said, the lie taking shape and form in my mouth, fooling around. The lie fleshed out, took on a veneer of credibility. That would be the explanation. No one had to know the dark kernel of that story. And your camera, it was having technical difficulties that night? Never was a good piece of equipment. Regretted buying it the same week. He stuck out his hand and we shook on it, and I have kept my word to now. There isn't a good reason why I broke my promise. I'd never known true fear till that night, but I replayed in my head over and over. The recording is long gone, of course, but every detail of that night has been branded on my mind. I remember the fear, but I cannot think of a single action the two of them had done to threaten me. Eerie, unnatural, but without a drop of malice. It'll be Halloween soon. I know where I'll be on that dark night. Some things roam the streets that shouldn't be there. The masks and costumes aren't always for the children. Sometimes they're for the adults, for our own protection. After the deputy left, I watched the video forwards, just once. I remember seeing the two figures on my lawn, slowly inching their hands up, locking them under the sheets and waiting for the sun to rise. Things that shouldn't be out on this good earth. But sometimes, just sometimes, they just want the simple things, like one last trick or treat. Wow. There you go. Chat, there's our second story. What did we think of that one? That was very different to the first one, but honestly just as terrifying, just not as heavy with its themes, I think. What do we think of that? Those are two insane stories. Very, very creepy. Yeah, I don't know. I would never even want to look out my window or my front door ever again if that was me. I could never. That would freak me out. Still a 9 to 10 for me. Yeah, fair. Yeah, that's right up there. That's definitely right up there. Yeah, that was insane. That was insane. All right. I think we should move on to something slightly different. We should move on to some of our community corner, which is very, very exciting, and hearing some of chat's creepy confessions and some of their stories as well. So, chat, I'm gonna move on to this part. So these are real stories now from some of the members of this wonderful community. I'm going to keep them all anonymous, but these have been sent in to me, and I'm going to read them out quickly. They're much shorter than these stories we've just read, but I'm going to read them out, and then we can react to them, and then we'll go from there. So, all right. So this has been sent in to me from one of the members of our community here. I'm not going to name names, but I'm just going to read this one out. This one's a short one. This is was titled, "A Woman Tried to Break into Our Hotel Room." So, last July we planned a special day for my husband's birthday. We went to the zoo, and then we stayed at a Sybaris, the hotel rooms with the pools and stuff. The way they are set up is like the hotels are little condos of their own, so we had to drive around to get to our little condo room. We were watching the new Pet Sematary, and it was around midnight. A terrible movie, but it definitely sets the upcoming mood. We start hearing banging on the door. Assume it isn't anything as we are in our own little bubble, but it doesn't stop. For about 20 minutes, the banging continues. We honestly thought it was the outer door flailing around because of the wind, but it never stopped. I went into the bathroom and I can hear my husband yelling out the door, "You are at the wrong room." Apparently it was a woman banging on the door at midnight. We thought she was drunk and trying to get into our room for some reason. The banging continues for another half hour. We were terrified, but literally just thought it was some drunk woman trying to enter and got confused as to where her room actually was. The banging stops after a total of close to an hour, and we set our anxieties aside and go to bed. The next morning we go out the door to check out and get our stuff to leave, and we were greeted with 4 police cars and an ambulance. About 6 officers were standing around a woman laying in the grass. We went to check out and said something to the woman at checkout, asking if she knew anything that was going on in front of our room. They apologized and told us the police were already there before they got there and they didn't know anything. Feeling guilty now, we go and talk to the police standing outside and give them our information, telling them that this woman was banging on our hotel room door for about an hour last night at midnight. They thanked us for the information and let us know that this woman has mental issues and that she had escaped from a facility the next town over and was actually considered a missing person. They never followed up on our info, and as many times as I tried to figure out what had happened through Google searches, I couldn't find anything, but it ranks high up on the strangest things that I've ever encountered. Wow. Okay, that's insane. That's an insane story. Chat, what do we make of that? That's a real story. This isn't a made up story like the ones we just read. That's actually insane. Yeah, imagine hearing someone bang on your door, ignoring it because people are crazy. They go away, and then you wake up in the morning and you walk outside and that person is laying in the grass with police cars and an ambulance standing around, and then they say, "Hey, this woman actually escaped a facility from the next town and she's a missing person." Like, that's insane. And the fact that there was never any follow-up and this person couldn't find any information through Google searches is actually crazy. That's insane. Yeah, that's incredible. No record of it. Yep. True. 7 but +1 for being real. Yeah. That in terms of like how strange but also creepy that is, like that's up there, especially because it's a real thing that happened to someone here. So there you go. There is the first story from our community. Now I'm going to read the next one. This one is a little bit longer, but nothing like the stories that I read before, so this one should be pretty quick as well. Alright, so this is from another one that was submitted by someone from our community, so I'm going to read this one out to you guys. I've always known I've been more in tune with the spiritual world. My first experience was as a kid when my mum would wake me up in the middle of the night saying that I was screaming. Common phrases were, "No, leave me alone," or the most common, "Run." At some point, my mum chalked it up to being a weird kid thing that I would grow out of. My first memory of a night terror, I was 8. I had already woken up, scared, found my way to my parents' bed. When I had fallen back to sleep, I was at a concert. The air was thick and hot, and everything was cast in red and purple lights. Loud rock music was blaring, and when I looked up, I was holding my mum's hand. All of a sudden, a dark entity stretched across the sky. No one seemed to notice, just me looking up, knowing something was looking back. I felt the entity reach out, but not to me, to my mum. I watched as it grabbed her soul from her body. I reached out and latched onto her soul, pulling it back down, back to me. Tears were streaming down my face, but I held tight, and I felt the entity rear back as if caught off guard. That's when I woke up. Tears still in my eyes, but there was my mum, peacefully sleeping like it never happened. I laid awake the rest of the night. Then next time I would see the entity, I was a bit older, in middle school. While the sleep screaming continued, and other small experiences, nothing stuck out that much. Until one night when he visited me. No dreams or nightmares touched me that night, but I woke up with a start, unable to move, and when I looked over, there he was, sitting on the side of my bed. I could only see torso up, and he looked as if he was made of wood. The grain of each plank swirling and moving almost as if it was his blood pumping through his body. My eyes moved up to his face. A nub of wood made up his nose. His mouth was sealed and his eyes were gaping holes. I was finally able to blink, and when my eye readjusted, he was gone. The dark shadow outline was the only thing left. Once I got into high school, I was able to have more of an understanding of the spiritual world and how to access it. I was fascinated with tarot cards, aura reading, and lucid dreaming. The latter I was obsessive over. I actively found myself learning how to lucid dream, and pretty quickly was able to do it. During this time, I found myself going through spells of insomnia followed by spells of all lucid dreams. While in my insomnia spells, I found myself frozen in place all night, body stiff, a cold sweat soaking my bed, and my eyes going dry from an inability to blink. While on the flip side, when I would lucid dream, I felt unstoppable. I would be able to control my dreams from the second they start, find myself lost in my own mind all night, only waking for my morning alarm. Around this time, I also started seeing it out of the corner of my eye. Every so often, there would be a dark fog outline of something or someone, only there for a split second, and never in clear view. I would be left with this cold and empty feeling. I was able to get good at ignoring it, but every so often it caught me off guard, and I would snap my head that way. It always seems to increase activity after, almost like once he snags my attention he gets stronger. After a few years of cycling with my sleep schedule, a friend showed me a documentary about lucid dreaming and night terrors that opened my brain to memories from childhood. I started getting paranoid that my dreams would lead me back to the night terrors I experienced as a child. With a newly open mind and aware that I might not be in full control, my insomnia increased, until one day my brother told me he had been visited. At this point I was keeping everything to myself. No one knew I was struggling with this, including my brother. From what he had told me, he woke in the middle of the night, frozen in place, and when he was able to drag his eyes up, there was a man on the side of his bed. My brother blinked, thinking it was the last bit of sleep, but there the man was, still now closer. He blinked again, and the man was inches from his face. A man made of wood, with gaps for eyes and a sealed mouth. I don't have a memory of how it happened, if it was slow and gradual or quick and all at once, but after my brother's experience I stopped dreaming altogether. I later would describe it as a light in a room getting turned off, where I know it's still there somewhere inside of me, and if I just braved the dark and reached a hand out, I could turn it back on. Somewhere in the back of my mind, anytime I reach the door of that dark room, I can feel something there, silent, watching, waiting. In college, I tried to get back into aura reading and tarot. Nothing to do with sleep or dreams, just a fun party trick, no more. I would host people in my dorm room and would do everyone's reading. Soon my roommate and I noticed lights would often flick off. We had string lights, lamps, overhead lights, and night lights. All would turn off randomly to the point we were so used to it that when someone else was in the room we would refer to it as our dorm ghost. Now, I went to school in the middle of nowhere. You were one exit away to there being nothing for miles. Sure enough, my roommate and I one night missed our exit and were stuck trying to find the next exit. We were still new to the area, and once we got off the GPS, had us going back roads to school, we sat there for a minute deciding, as we could just turn around and get back on the highway. On the other hand, the GPS had it quicker to go this new way. It was starting to get dark, and we decided we wanted to get back home, and off we went. As we got further and further into our drive, the roads got more and more isolated, until we turned onto a single-lane dirt road, covered with wood on both sides. The GPS said 2 miles on this road before making our next turn. We started down as the last bit of light was fading. Once on this road, both of our phones had lost service, no GPS, the Bluetooth playing music failed, and the radio was all static. Trying to stay calm, we knew we only had 2 miles on this road, and it's just some road in the middle of nowhere. It was not 2 miles. 5 minutes on this road turned to 15 and led to 30. Each increasing minute we started to get more terrified. Panic set in as we both started to shake with nerves. By the time we finally got out, 45 minutes had passed. We were both ghost white and drove in silence the rest of the way back. Pulling back into campus, there was a murder of crows waiting for us. Not just a couple, but close to 100 birds sitting on the main road waiting. That's when I saw it out of the corner of my eye, following me to college, having effects in the real world. The dark, shimmering outline. Him. I stopped tarot reading, stopped aura readings, stopped anything I might not be in full control of. But he was already there. I broke my ankle a few weeks later, a freak accident in which I needed surgery to fix, and 8 weeks on recovery. My thoughts right before the accident? I should stop. But something told me no, just one more time. Shortly after I had recovered, my roommate broke her wrist in, as you guessed it, a freak accident. We both still live with poor recovery from each, myself having 2 metal pins in my ankle and her with a bony bump on her wrist. Both always cold to the touch, like they aren't entirely us. I try to put him out of my mind. While I've had other experiences since then, and while all slightly different, there is always something familiar about them. The same feeling of dread, how I get cold and empty, like I am still a child, sometimes getting frozen and stuck in place, unable to move, unable to control, but always somehow knowing his eyes are on me. Shivers. Oh, shivers. That's, okay. That's insane. That's actually mental. What do we make of that? Good story though. It was too detailed. That's what makes me think it's fake. Well, this is someone's real experience. So, yeah, I would say that's real. It's not like the stories that were creative writing pieces. These were sent in from people in our community. So, no, these ones are real experiences that people had, which is insane. Shiver me timbers. Yeah, that's yeah, that will keep you up at night. I actually feel like when I was reading some of these, I've been getting like the little shivers, even though like it's quite warm here for me at the moment. Australia is has been very warm recently, and today was no different. But yeah, even with that, I'm getting shivers from reading these stories. Yeah, I've definitely got goosebumps. Crazy. Okay, what about a spook level? How creepy were these 2 stories from our community? If you had to rate it from 1 to 10, how spooky or how creepy do you think these stories were? These are kind of crazy stories that have been sent in. I can't believe people actually have these experiences. Like I don't have experiences quite like this. I give it a 9. I'm still doubting it's fake, so I remove 1 point. Okay, so an 8, still right up there. That's crazy. A 10, yeah, I think especially because, you know, this is someone's actual experience. Like, yeah, it's not just a made up story. Like, I guess anyone could write a horror story, but to have these experiences, yeah, 10. It's crazy. Yeah. I guess as I was reading it, chat, I was thinking about this for myself, actually. I was thinking there's just one in particular that comes to mind. Oh, I guess two. There's two that come to mind. So it's not necessarily stories or things I've seen, but it's more like dreams that I've had. Now, I would love to do another whole week on dreams and things like that, so stay tuned. That might be something we do in the future. But just as a little, just a little of my own experience with dreams when I was little, I can remember distinctly one dream that I would have that was recurring, and there's not all that much to it, but it was like a whole bunch of clocks. And I mean like grandfather clocks, like old clocks, analog clocks. And it was like all of them were just, I could just visualize them, and I can still visualize it now. All these clocks going off at different times, randomly, all across my vision, basically. That's when I can distinctly remember. There was something about it that was just terrifying. It was like I was just sitting in peace, quietly, before clocks would just go off. And they were quite loud, but then they would just all go off at random times, and something about it just terrified me as a child. And then I remember my mind switching to a scene of me standing on the edge of a cliff, but this cliff was all inside of what I could only describe as a cave, so it was enclosed. And I remember some friends at the time that I went through school with, I think they were on the other side of it. It was such a weird dream and experience that I had, and I'm sure I had it multiple times around that same time that I had these clock dreams. But in terms of one dream that I had as more of a one-off, this one terrified me as a kid, and I can remember it still to this day, just because of how brutal it felt, and I even told this person about it. So I remember that I was walking through the woods, which is a funny thing to say even, because Australians, well, we have bushland, but we don't really have what, gets described in lots of stories and in Hollywood, and, this idea of like the woods or like forests that, scary stories usually are birthed, or where murders happen or things like that. But it was kind of that vibe. And I was walking through, and I was with some people, and it seemed like they were just walking with me, not necessarily bringing me along. And then I remember seeing my dad there, and basically the guys were talking to him, these people that we were walking with. And then I remember my dad turning to me and saying, like, sorry, like, this needs to happen, you need to go there. And basically I had to go in front of a tree stump, put my head over it, for them to chop my head off, essentially, decapitate me. And when I thought about it at the time, it made me think of the biblical story of, if people are aware of that story of Abraham being told to sacrifice his son Isaac on an altar, and then at the last minute, God basically calling out to say, no, don't do that. Here's a ram that you can sacrifice instead. I don't know why I thought of that, but like, it was such an insane story for me, or even thing to think about as a kid, that my dad was like, yeah, this has to happen. This is normal. This is okay. Like, I'm saying to them, it's okay. You need to kill my son here. I was like, what? Are you okay? What the freak? So that was an experience I had growing up with a really crazy, I guess you wouldn't even call it a dream, that's more of a nightmare. But I've had some really weird ones. But as a kid, those sorts of ones are really scary because it's like, you would do that to me, you would leave me in that. But obviously not. My dad is great, and he loves me very much. But it didn't feel like it in those moments. But yeah, that's my story anyway. Well, that's pretty much all I wanted to do today. This was really fun to do live with you guys, so I appreciate you hanging out with me. I don't really have anything more to say on the Halloween topic for now, but I would love to have this again with some other topics. I'm very excited that this is sort of the kickstart with all of its glitches and issues, especially with the Twitch problems earlier for the second story. So apologies for that, but I appreciate you all being here and hanging out, especially for this portion of my stream, for this recorded podcast. This has been the KhaiCast, the Halloween special, episode 1. There'll be a lot more to come, but huge shout out to you guys. You guys, I'm pointing to you for those listening. Thank you so much for those who have watched and are listening to this back as well. I really appreciate you. You guys are awesome. As I said at the start, please do check out my socials, and please do join the Discord if you're not part of it already. I'll be starting to post more content, hopefully very soon. And obviously I've got to edit up this video for YouTube as well, so you guys will be seeing that. But you can find me at KhaiLemasic. You guys always want to know how to say that name. That's how I would say the name, but feel free to call me Kai. That's sort of my on every social, so you can check me out there. And thank you so much for those who submitted stories and gave me some tips and tricks and shared an interest in this sort of journey. I really appreciate you guys. Those stories were perfect for Halloween. I think those true stories from some of our community members were amazing, and those stories that I found were crazy. Like, they were very well written, really spooky, really fit the vibe. So I'm very happy with that. So thank you so much, guys, for being here and listening to me for so long. But don't worry, we will be doing it again. This isn't the end of this. This is just the beginning. As I said, we might do some pre-recorded stuff. We might do some more live stuff as well in terms of podcasting. And I'm very excited to say there will be special guests for specific topics coming up. So I'm very excited for that. So get keen. And much love to you all. I will see you guys on the next podcast for episode 2. I will not say what it's about yet, but I will let you know. And hoping to do this weekly now, to have a different episode with some different guests and different topics. So yes. Anyway, Cowboy Kai is out.